Well, I wish it wasn't so, but we live in a broken world, don't we? And that broken world is full of hurt people. And as we've said in Celebrate Recovery for years, hurt people hurt people. But how does the hurt that can be traumatic, that can lead to rejection specifically, maybe abandonment, and some of that past trauma, how does that shape our current present condition, and how can facing it shape our future? Today we're going to lean into rejection, abandonment, and the effects of trauma and how that shapes us in our recovery journey. Welcome to Celebrate Recovery Official, a podcast that shares life-changing stories, courage, hope, and leadership wisdom, all centered around the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, where the Celebrate Recovery principles were birthed, that helps us to face those events in our life that bring up hurt and maybe some nasty core beliefs and how we see ourselves, God, and others in our circumstances, and that lead to unhealthy defenses, protections, habits that cause havoc on our relationship with our community and our fellowship with God, ultimately to bring healing, new healthy truths, new healthy practices, and restored relationships. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the Global Field Director with Celebrate Recovery, and it's good to be here with you. Hope you're enjoying these podcasts. I just got to say, when I go on the road, and just recently got back from Phoenix, Arizona, at the time that I'm recording this, and man, it was just so good to hear from people. Still amazing how many people don't know we have a podcast, so we have a long way to go in getting the word out there, but it's always encouraging to hear people say, thank you for doing this, and we use it in our leaders meeting. I use it when I sit down with my sponsees, and I'll have them listen to it, and then we come together and we talk about it. And so I never dreamed that kind of usage would play out in these podcasts. So just very humbled and very grateful, one, that you're listening. And we've said it before that if people stop listening, we certainly don't want to add to the noise that the world is providing. And if it just becomes noise, and then we'll stop doing this. But grateful that people are listening, and you're one of them if you're listening to this. And maybe you stumbled onto this because somebody told you about this podcast. So thank you for your friend, and thank you for being willing to give up some of your time. Maybe you're on the treadmill. Keep going. I know it feels painful. Maybe you're working out. Maybe you're walking. Maybe you're driving down the road. Maybe you just need something to put you to sleep. I don't know. But thanks for giving us a high-star rating wherever you listen, on our YouTube channel. Sharing this, giving us a good, strong review is very, very helpful. Helps us to reach more people. But today's topic, talking about rejection, abandonment. We live in a broken world, and there's plenty of hurt. I wish it wasn't so, but there's a reason why Jesus had to come back. The reason he had to come to this earth, and the reason he's coming back is, he died for you and I because we live in a broken world, and we have unhealthy, holy people. They're holy and called righteous because of what Christ did, but unhealthy. And I think that's what I love about Celebrate Recovery is it not only leads us to Christ, but if we are following Christ, leads us to walk in healthiness with Christ. And so, but I wanted this was a topic idea that came through from one of our listeners, and I appreciate the ideas. Keep those coming in. But the question is, how does rejection or abandonment, or even those past traumatic events, how do they shape who I am today in the present? Again, our identity is in Christ. We are not our hurt, hang-ups, our habits, our trauma, the effects of the trauma. That's not our identity, but how does it shape us and how we view the world? How do we see the world and engage with the world? And so how does that affect me and shape my present? But how does it, as I face the hurts in that cycle, how does it shape my future? And so one of the things I've learned in my own recovery is that rejection and abandonment specifically, they wound my core identity. Okay, it doesn't change my identity, but it can wound my identity. And I can with confidence say I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. But what the wounds and the trauma that we experience in our life do is that they can cause us to not just hurt, not just to feel things, not just to feel hurt and the effects of the woundedness from hurting people, but we can in that place start to question our worth. That's the hang up part of the cycle that, at least in my interpretation, that's kind of when I'm thinking about the cycle. We have hurts, we run from hurts that can take us into some unhealthy core beliefs, and woundedness can make us question our worth. When I experience abandonment from my biological dad and even stepfathers through the years, and even emotionally with my mom never left me physically, although there was a season where I had to live in foster care because of the dysfunction happening in and around her, and even from her at times. But in that pain, we experience abandonment and rejection, and it can make us question our worth. And some of those questions that would feed into my narrative that weren't true, but it made sense based on the pain. I'm not enough. I'm unlovable. Am I enough? Am I unlovable? No, I'm not enough. I'm not. I really am unlovable. If you left me, someone in the future will leave me. And so it caused me to really question my worth and value to be with me. And so when abandonment and trauma happens early in our life, especially, it leaves a mark. Or if it happens repeatedly, I often tell people if we're in the middle of trauma, it's hard to heal from trauma when we're still in the trauma. And so that's why we have to make sure that safety is the utmost importance. If you're in a situation where you're experiencing physical abuse, for example, it's okay to get yourself to a safe space. But those messages that we internalize, maybe you can relate. I'm not enough. I'm unlovable. I will be left again. And one of the things about Celebrate Recovery is we're going in to heal that woundedness that has wounded our core identity. That our identity is formed by God, not by our wounds. So we can be, our core identity can be wounded, and the part of the healing process is taking the pain to Him, but also knowing that my identity is meant to be formed by God, not by my wounds. And so I'm unlovable is not a right thinking, but it's not a right message. I'm not enough is not correct, but I need to be honest. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm believing, so that I can get to healing the pain. God, I give you this. This is what I'm believing about myself, and I want to be honest. If one of my kids or grandkids comes up and says, Papa, I feel like I'm unlovable, it would be wrong for me. What? That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? Oh my gosh, my heart breaks. Come here. Tell me how you came to know that. And I think that's the same kind of compassion we have to give ourselves in this journey, is like, there's a reason why we came to believe those core identities. So ultimately, we want to get to the truth, but if we lead with truth without being present and connecting with each other, and we're trying to correct our thinking, it's a little bit misattuned. So that's what I love about Celebrate Recovery. We make space, and even sometimes in our small groups, people will say, as I sit here, I just know I'm unlovable. And we want to stop the group and go, all right, time out. That's wrong. That's a lie. But there is healing. As hard as it is to hear some bad theology, God doesn't love me, and I'm just sitting here, and I'm just learning how to accept that. And as much as we want to correct that, sometimes we need to let them get that off their chest and off their mind and their heart, so that we can get to the truth. And the mentor, the sponsor, the accountability groups, there's opportunities outside of those settings to say, hey, when did you first, it's a great question to ask, when did you first come to learn that? And now we're getting into the trauma, the rejection, the abandonment. It may have wounded our core identity. It's not true, but if you're wounded, you're wounded. My legs were designed to move and walk. If you take a baseball bat and hit my knee, it would make sense that I can't walk. And so, well, that's designed to walk. You should just be able to walk. Well, woundedness can prevent us from walking. And so it's honoring, noticing, organizing the pain that's wounded my core identity. And part of that is being honest about what the negative core beliefs that I'm believing so that we can get to the truth. And it's just a reminder, Psalm 27:10 comes to mind, though my father and my mother forsake me. And when we think about the early, the trauma that happens early in our life, that can have an effect on us. That's why it's important to go back as far as we can remember to those painful, traumatic moments, not to blame, not to point fingers, but to understand our story. Though my father and my mother, and in my case, that was true for both of them, and multiple fathers and a mother that forsake me. They had their own brokenness. Now today in my healing, I can look back and say they were doing the best they could. They were just coming from their own dysfunction. Though they hurt me, though they forsake me, Psalm 27:10 says, the Lord will receive me. And when we can come to that posture of learning what it's like to be held, even though we've been rejected, to have someone be present with us, even when we felt abandonment, it does something for our nervous system. It does something for our heart, and transformation takes place. So when that rejection and abandonment becomes really loud, a loud voice in our heart and mind, it can begin to define how we see ourselves, how we see God, how we see others, and what we believe we deserve. And by the way, we don't deserve anything. And yet mercy says, I'm going to give you what you don't deserve. Even if it's in the case of, but you've been wronged, but I have a sinful nature and I've hurt people, not to diminish the hurt and the trauma done to me, but I don't deserve anything, but God, you give me what I don't deserve. And so that posture helps me. I've been reading through the book of Job. And by the way, I've heard someone say, don't ever quit before you start the book of Job, and don't quit in the middle of it because you'll be super discouraged. Finish the entire book. So I'm on like chapter 24 of Job right now. I think there's close to 40 chapters, but it's hard right now because he's talking about the pain, but ultimately we're going to get to the hope. And Job is talking about that. It's like, I'm feeling a lot of offenses, even though I've done nothing wrong, but I know that in my sinful nature, I don't deserve anything anyway. And that's just a posture that we're kind of leaning into as we get honest about our pain, even though it's not my fault, it's now my responsibility. And God, would you meet me in this space? I think another point that jumps out is that past hurt, past trauma, past abandonment, rejection, whatever, will shape how I attach in relationships. Now, I'm big on attachment. I'm kind of showing my hand a little bit, but I think when we think about codependency is just the effects of insecure attachment. Somewhere along the way, we've been hurt and wronged by someone that was an attachment figure that should have been there for safety and protection and love and security and all that. But somewhere along the way, they hurt me. And so in that, it's created some anxious attachment or avoidant attachment. And kind of those core fears, and that is fear of abandonment and fear of vulnerability. And so we stay in this place of insecurity and we push people away, et cetera, not to get too much into that. But I think the past hurts definitely shape how we attach in today's relationships, how we attach for future relationships. I'm not going to let anybody hurt me again. And so we become very stubborn and hard shell around our heart because we don't want to be hurt again, but there's a cost to that. So that unhealed rejection, when we don't face the hurt, and in this hurt, we're specifically talking about rejection or abandonment, it affects and impacts how I connect with today's relationships. I can either become super clingy, and that's just codependency and enmeshment, where I'm insecure, and so I got to stay close to you because you're going to be one more person that leaves me because I'm afraid I'm going to lose you, and I have fear of abandonment. That's that anxious attachment. Or others will keep distance from us because of the vibe we're kicking off, or we fear closeness, and so we become avoidant because we have fear of vulnerability, that we're afraid someone's going to hurt us. And so those past hurts definitely shape, and this is why we got to face those hurts. As hard as it is to face that, we have to lean into that so that we can be honest about how it's shaping our connection with relationships. Love God, love others. Take a super quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation around just how that rejection, abandonment, and past trauma can shape our present, and hopefully through healing shape our future in a positive way. Stick with me. I'll be right back. Hey friends, did you know that we have an online open share meeting every single Wednesday? People from all over the world come together. It's such a sweet time to hear from people from Australia and England. I mean, people all over are coming together to share their hurts, hangups, and habits. We have a devotional or a testimony, and then we break up into gender-specific groups. You can share or just listen. Either way, you're going to be impacted. Hey, if you'd like to be a part of that, go to celebraterecovery.com, grab the link, and we'll see you at noon Pacific on Wednesdays for our online global open share meeting. Welcome back. So right before the break, just kind of wrapping up that thought, we are trying to be honest about the past hurt, because the realization is it has shaped how we attach to new relationships. And sometimes we choose these patterns, these ways to interact with the world consciously, and sometimes we do it inadvertently because it's just an effect. It's become, this is why I like to look at habits as protections and defenses as well. This is where we've learned these survival. This is how I stay alive. These survival strategies. This is why we got to face the hurt, and that's why we got to invite as the securest attachment relationship in our life, Jesus Christ, into that, because He's not going to forsake us. But it makes sense. You might be scared. That's why the hang-ups are being honest about that. My view of God, others, and circumstances, myself, is distorted, and I'm scared to invite you in. And that may be the starting point. God, I'm scared to be vulnerable with you, because what if you're one more that leaves me and hurts me? And so we've learned these survival strategies, and kudos to you for having the strength within you to be where you are, in spite of your story, in spite of those past traumas. Even what you feel in those traumas makes sense, and kudos to you for staying alive. However, we have to honor that strong side of you, but we got to pay attention to how you're wired. There's a longing inside your heart for connection, and Jesus Christ is not only willing, He's able, He's caring, and He wants to be with you in that. And so in this space, we're trying to be honest about our protections, our survival strategies. At the same time, we want to guard our heart so that we can move in a different directions. Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Our wounded heart, Rodney's wounded heart in my past, for a long time determined how I loved, how I trusted, how I protected myself in the present. So my past, when I ignore my past, it will affect my presence, my present, and even my presence with relationships. So I have to be super honest with that. So facing that, changes my strategies, changes my survival strategies, inviting, at least staying curious about trying new different ways. I think the third thing that I would like to bring up is that my past trauma inadvertently will train my nervous system to expect danger. When I'm with somebody, and there's lots of studies on this, I won't nerd out on you too much on this. When I've experienced in my attachment relationships, especially those relationships that should have been there for me, like parents, in those scenarios where trauma happened and they dropped me, and maybe verbally, overtly, or covertly, they dropped me and missed me. My nervous system says, go get ready for danger. And so we train in our trauma. It trains our nervous system to expect danger. And I tell people all the time, our bodies are so stinking smart. These are the bodies that God created. He created this incredible mechanism in our body, the nervous system, our brain. It is designed to be alert and at least recognize perceived threats. Hopefully we can, through the process as we heal from our past, understand what is an actual threat, and inviting Jesus in safe relationships into our circle retrains our brain. But we need that experience of safe people around us. That's why community is such a vital part of the healing from our trauma, our abandonment, our rejection. That's why it's so critical. Our past lives in our body, and our body says, "Oof, get ready." Even when we experience new, different, deeper interactions, someone shows up and they say, "Hey, I do love you." Those circumstances are different. Sometimes it takes a while for my body not to be on high alert. And oftentimes you'll see that with couples that are working through struggles. They're bringing their family of origin trauma into this new family system, and we bump into each other. I know me and my wife have kind of had to walk through that over the last 34 years. So we can overreact to small. It's like, that's such a small trigger. Why am I having such an adverse response? It's just kind of becoming this big thing. It's a small trigger, but big overreaction, or we'll shut down emotionally. Makes sense. If you don't get big here, you fear that you're going to get hurt. If you don't shut down, this is going to get worse. And it makes sense. We're trying to understand the good reasons why we do what we do. That's the value of that inventory process, so that we can ultimately change, we call that a corrective emotional experience. When we can share about that and we experience new healthy connection, it creates this corrective emotional experience in our body, in our nervous system, and say, okay, not everyone is dangerous. And what a beautiful thing that even in the pain, you've learned to be on guard, to have your antennas up for someone that might be unsafe. And we want to trust that discernment, but we don't want it to be that everyone is pushed out now. Because in that place, we live in constant anxiety or constant control, and that's just an exhausting place. I was sharing this verse with some reps on a call recently, Isaiah 26, verse 3. God, we're talking about God. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast. And then you could almost throw a why. Why? Why would he keep perfect peace for those whose minds are steadfast? Because they trust in him. Because they trust in you, Lord. And so that's that being reminded that he's the one that's going to bring perfect peace, and through the community, through the body that he's putting around us, he's going to create a new experience as the stronger, wiser other that God has put in my life that is safe. It makes sense that it's hard to let anybody in, but just stay curious about could it be possible that there are safe people out there? For me, it was male figures, number one, but my stepfathers, and even my dad leaving me when I was 2, and I know there was circumstances around that, not completely in his control. My mom had her own dysfunction, but the feeling and sense of abandonment. And in that place of abandonment, it had an effect on me. And it was hard for me as I grew and healed to begin to trust men, because men were my abusers, the stepfathers that came into my life, physically, verbally, emotionally, and sexually, in some cases, abusive. And it's hard to trust when that's been my experience. But what a cost to keep those male relationships out of my life, because to keep out the bad means I lost the gift of the good. And so when we think about the Isaiah 26, verse 3, that peace, that perfect peace, it's not just this kind of out of range spiritual concept. It is a beautiful kind of regulated, grounded state that God wants. When we think about our nervous system being dysregulated, we're inviting him in to regulate our nervous system. We're inviting him in to help us begin to trust new, safe relationships, to ground us, to help regulate our body, what he wants for us, even after the trauma that you and I may have experienced in our life. And man, that's a beautiful place to be, when we can face the hurt, understand those core beliefs, how I see myself, how I see God, others, my circumstances, understand how it's wounded my core identity, and it's not biblical, but I got to be honest about how it's impacted me, how it's affected how I relate to other people, how it's trained my nervous system to stay on alert all the time and to expect danger rather than being open and curious through the healing process, that maybe I could begin to let someone new and safe into my life and let him bring healing to my life, to bring that perfect peace that we talk about. Such a beautiful part of what we do in Celebrate Recovery. I'm going to stop there, and we'll do a part 2 of this, because there's just so much to unpack in that. But hopefully that's helpful for you. Might be worth playing it again, stop, pause, write some notes, maybe those core beliefs. How do I see myself, and how is this affecting me, and how I connect with other people, so that we can ultimately take that to the Father and bring healing, so that we can learn how to love God and love others the way God intended. Hey, thanks as always for being with me, and hope that you're getting a lot out of this. You matter to God, and he loves you. Thanks so much for being here. I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you guys.